In early 2022, a game called Wolf Game hit the stage on Ethereum, and it went nuts in ham. This game involved around two characters, a sheep and a wolf. This game received a ton of popularity because it's a game of chance and risk. But before we dive into more details on this game, let's go and give you a little backstory of this. Oh, and by the way, guys, timestamps will be in the description below so you guys can navigate to the part of the video that you guys want to jump to. This is the first NFT game with on-chain risk. That was the craze for this game. And it revolves around two characters, the wolf and the sheep. In order to play this game, you have to mint a character. And when you go to mint this character, you have a 90% chance of getting a sheep and a 10% chance of getting the wolf. But it doesn't only end there. If you have a wolf or someone else had a wolf and they were staking it, they have a 10% chance of stealing the new mints of the sheep. Here's some details so you guys can follow along. First, the sheep, if you did mint this, you would enter the barn and the sheep can be staked in the barn to earn 10,000 wool per day. Now, after you accumulate this wool, you do have to claim it. Now, there are two different options for this. One is you can shear your sheep and you can receive 80% of the wool and 20% will go to the wolf as tax. If you leave the barn, there's a 50% chance all the wool is gone, or there's a 50% chance that you keep it all. So it's a game of risk. Now, the staked wolf, they get a lot of benefits. So it's always nice to have a wolf, not financial advice, of course, but there's a 10% chance of stealing new mints. Second, they earn a share of the 20% of wool that is generated from the sheep. And third, they earn a share of the accumulated wool token from unstaking sheep. It's basically a game with the wolves versus the sheep. The game was going great until there was an exploit. Someone figured out how to turn 20,000 staked wool into 6 million wool. This basically created a massive inflation of the wool token. This wool token drives the ecosystem, because if you go back, in order to mint one of these sheeps or wolves, you had to have wool. So it was an economy to where you earned wool, but you had to use this wool in order to mint and keep playing the game. So unfortunately, the smart contract couldn't be patched. The game had to be recreated from scratch. And this is where we get to the full game in 2022. This video is going to cover Wolf Game, the full game, and all the details on it. It's crazy. It's literally like a game of virtual Catan. If you don't know what Catan is basically a board game where you try to get as many resources as possible and try to make as many deals as you can with other players in order to win the game. It's basically an accumulation of resources and other assets. So what is Wolf Game? Well, Wolf Game, like I mentioned to you guys, is a play to earn game that's gamifying the NFT experience with risk. The original game just involved the sheeps and the wolves and the demand to get wool. Remember, the wool is the lifeblood of the game because this was how you mint the sheep and how you kept playing the game. However, the new game has completely changed. In the beginning of the video, I kind of gave you guys a rundown on the early start of the game. This full game, you are unable to mint sheeps or wolves. So the Gen 0 and the Gen 1 sheep supply is capped. There's not going to be any more Gen 1 or Gen 0 sheep or Gen 1 and Gen 0 wolves. However, there will be Gen 2. I will get more into the details on the breeding later in this video. Guys, there's a lot of moving parts in this game. It's pretty sauce. So the second part of this game is the 20,000 individual land plots in this game for those who don't want to be as active. Now, another character comes into play, and this is the farmers. These can be used to boost the yields and speed up the breeding time. These farmers can no longer be minted, so there is a capped supply on these as well. I'll give more details on this later. The goal of the game is to strategize, collect, and win as much wool and resources as possible. Also known as a virtual game of Catan. If you guys haven't played Catan before, I recommend you guys do. This game is bridging Web 2 and Web 3, where the game pieces are the Web 3 function, where you own the assets, and the Web 2 is basically where the game is played. So this is on the individual game itself. There's no gas fees for votes / claiming taxes as a landowner. There's no gas for moving sheep or wolves or breeding, but energy is expended, so do keep that in mind. So depending on where the piece goes or where you move it, there is going to be energy costs. So let's go over some pieces in the game. So in total, we have 20,000 Genesis lands on 101 different communities. Community 1 to 100 is the farm. This is where the sheeps play. Community 0 is where the wolves breed and recharge. Inside each of these communities are individual lands. Let me show you what this looks like. As you guys can see here, this is what the plot looks like. If you want to select any of the lands, let's say 55, we can go ahead and visit this and see what it looks like. We get to enjoy this pretty cool relic while we're waiting. So as you guys can see here, right when you jump on the land, you can see that there are a bunch of different plots. Each of these plots are its own NFT. You can actually click right on the gate and it'll give you the details of it. So if you're a sheep and you want to be like, bro, what is this earning? Oh, it's earning grass, rocks, water, and no logs because it's got 0. But it's got a pretty good earning rate on stone. And you can see most of the plot is covered in stone. And you can see this sheep is going nuts and ham over here. Look at this guy. Get it, Johnny. Look at that. He's got 480 energy. Hopefully a wolf doesn't come get him. Anyways, more details on the wolves later. Let's go and get back into the PowerPoint. Community 1 to 100 is where the resource composition is. There are 5 types. You got wood, stone, grass, water, and chops. Chops cannot be farmed. Only wood, stone, grass, and water. The chops are what you get when you burn the sheep, and these chops, you do need them for breeding with the wolves. Each of these have their own different utilities in the game and are emitted at different rates. I'll give you the details on this later. Production can be increased based on the individual landowners upgrading the community silos with better defenses and resource levels. This will cost resources to level up. So if you wanted to upgrade the land, it may take like 30,000 stone, 30,000 logs, 10,000 water, whatever the details are. That's how you can upgrade it. I'll get into that later in this video. This is a full deep dive, guys. So wolves can sabotage this as well. So wolves can go in there and harm the earnings. So if the sheep are just killing it like that one sheep was getting stone, well, if a wolf comes by, he can basically steal what he's got. And that's more of the active side of the game. The passive side is if you want to be a landowner. The landowners basically just tax the system and say, hey, you want to come mine here? You got to pay me 50%, 100%, 30%, whatever. 100% wouldn't be smart because then no one would come, yada, yada, yada. You guys get the point. But landowners, in order to attract more sheep to come onto their land, they would want to level up the land because the sheep can earn more in the same amount of time. And you would also want to keep your taxes down to attract more. If you go too high on taxes, then you're going to lose all your customers. You don't want to do that. Now, weather also plays a role in this. If the game couldn't throw any more monkey wrenches, they decided to go ahead and talk about weather. Weather also plays a role determining the looting games and the multiplier on the resources that are collected. Each community has its own 60-day forecast, rainy, sunny, and cloudy. Each of them benefit different characters. I'll get more into the details on this. And lastly, again, like I mentioned, the tax rate. This is voted on by individual landowners. So that whole community 0 or community 1, community 2, each of the different land plots inside there have a vote. So if I say 50% and all the other guys say 50%, well then the taxes in that land are going to be 50%. However, if half of us say 25% and the other half says 50%, well, the taxes are going to be in the middle, which is around 37.5%. And the community members want to be able to get together and understand, hey, look, if our taxes are too high, we're going to get less sheep. We're going to make less. But we also don't want to go too low on our taxes because we won't be earning as much as we could. So these are what the pieces in the game looks like. You can see here on, oh man, I'm just going to drag my face. You can see here, right here, this is what your wallet looks like. You can basically swap out different tokens. So if you get a bunch of water, you can swap it for stone. Eventually, you'll be able to swap this for wool. But right now, it's just resources for other resources. You can't swap for other assets outside of the game. This is what your 60-day weather forecast looks like. You got sunny, rainy, cloudy, whatever. And this is where you upgrade your community. So let's say, for example, dude, we need to upgrade this. So me as a landowner, I would say, okay, we need to upgrade this stone because we're only earning at 195 daily. We need to earn this 215. So we would pay to upgrade to the level 2 of the stone or whatever level you're currently at. And you can see this is community 37. This is their information. They have 84 sheep, 8 wolves, and their tax rate is 25%. You can see they're all level 1s, which is doo-doo squirt. So it doesn't stop there. There are different structures for each landowner. So this is on the passive side. So if you're a landowner, this is for you. However, if you're like a sheep and a wolf, whatever, you guys can do your thing. But if you want the landowner, you're probably going to want to hear this part. A landowner must spend wool and resources to build or upgrade structures. They would want to upgrade these structures because if they're in community 0, which is where the wolves go, they can breed wolves and people will pay wool in order to do that. Remember, wool is the lifeblood of the game. That's where the landowners can monetize and they can sell the wool, get ETH, whatever they want to do. And the barns is where a single pair of sheep will breed. This is community 1 to 100. So upgrading these barns does cost money to do that, but it would be in your incentive as a landholder to do this. Because if you increase the barn, more sheeps or more wolves will be enticed and say, hey, look, I can go here and spend half the time in order to breed and get another sheep or a wolf. Remember, a sheep or a wolf is also part of the Web3 space. So these sheeps or wolves can be sold on OpenSea, Blur, or SudoSwap. They can be sold for a profit. So you have the landowners who are making money on the wool, and you also have the sheeps and the wolves that are making money selling the Generation 2 sheeps and wolves. They can also put the sheeps to work to go earn them resources and keep playing in the economy. Now the bathhouses, these are for the sheeps or the wolves to recharge their energy. The sheeps have to use this once on a farm because after they expend their energy, they have to go recharge and they have to go pay and use the bathhouse. The den is where the wolves breed, and the higher the level, the faster the breed time. And each of the landowners, if they're able to build structures on their land, well, can determine the fees. I can say, hey, it's 1,000 wool for a sheep to come breed over here. And they would have to pay the 1,000 wool. Now, if I put mine too high, there may be other landholders who go cheaper and I don't get any business. So you have to factor that in and weigh the cost. And if you're looking to go buy land, not every single piece of land can have a structure on it. So make sure you check to see if it can have a structure. This is what it will say if it can have a structure. As you can see, it says no buildings allowed. In order to find one that allows you to have a structure, I think this one would have a structure on it. This one looks pretty fancy. But you would click and see, oh no, it doesn't have a structure. But it'll say it can have a structure or structures allowed, and you can build your own structure on it. And the best part is you got some like awesome music. Like you can listen to this all day. Well, it's been all day, so I'm going to turn that off. Here are the pieces in the game. These are the different costs. The slide's kind of cut off at the top. But it says grass, wood, stone, water. Let me see if I can drag my face. This right here, this is for upgrading the grass in the land. This is the breakdown of the different costs. Everyone starts at level 1 by default. If I wanted to go to level 2, I would have to pay this much grass, this much wood, this much stone, water, etc. Now this would explain the understanding for the resources. This is the same thing for water and defense costs. You would also want to upgrade the defenses because when you upgrade the defense, it's also going to create a safer environment for the sheep. And they won't get robbed as hard by the wolves. So here are the sheep. The sheep, you have Gen 0 and Gen 1. These two can breed. One can do with 0 and 0 can do with 1. However, the Generation 2 that you get cannot be bred. So you only get Generation 2. Regardless of if you do Gen 0 and Gen 0 or Gen 0 and Gen 1. It's always a Generation 2 sheep. There's not going to be any more Gen 0 or Gen 1 sheeps or wolves. The Gen 2 sheep, these can be stolen by wolves. This is during the breeding process. I'll get into the details on that later. So the utility of the sheep is to collect resources on the farms. And the generation and energy will determine the rate at which it earns. So you have the land that gives the base rate, and then you also have the skill of the sheep. If it's a Gen 0, it's going to earn better than a Gen 1 and it's also going to have more energy so it can earn for a longer time. So going to the breeding process, the first 50% of the breeding time, if the sheep leave the barn during this phase, they will not get a generation 2 sheep. But the butcher will give a outstanding offer of the chops for courting the sheep. So if you decide to reject, whatever, you still get chops in exchange, and you can trade these for other resources. And the chops, the wolves like those. The wolves use those for breeding. But if you are stolen from, which the wolves steal from you, they do steal your chops. So be careful with that. Second 50% of the breeding time is when the sheep are born. The sheep have to be nurtured until it's at max energy to have the full sheep. So let's say the full breeding time takes 30 days. Well, you'll get the sheep at the 16th day, but it's not your actual sheep until the full allotted time. So you got to sit there and wait. This is the energy breakdown for each of the sheep. As you can see here, the generation 0 has a higher max energy than a gen 1. And a gen 1 is much better than a gen 2. But these randomize for the generation 2s. So each sheep also costs money to breed, so do keep this in mind. The wool cost is determined by the barn owner, so it's your benefit to hold structure if you want to get some wool. You can also make money with resources by swapping the resources out for wool, but if you want to earn wool directly, you can do that through the breeding process. And it also costs energy for these sheep to breed. Now, this is the farmers. These are different pieces in the game. Farmers basically can be used for breeding. They can help advance the courting and nurturing phase. They can protect from wolves as long as the farmer is in the barn, and the sheep will be protected. They also have cooldown time when you use them. So here are the different scenarios as you can see above. If a sheep is courting and it's unprotected, well then the wolves get the chops. But if there is a farmer, then the chops stay with the sheep and the farmer just does its thing and the wolf gets nothing. However, if they're unprotected when they're nurturing, the wolf can enter the barn and wait a certain period of time. If a higher level alpha wolf doesn't come by, then that wolf that's in there is going to take the sheep. The wolves go all the way up to A8. Alpha 8 wolves are basically the best in the game, and there's only a handful of them. So if you have an A7, it's not likely you're going to get stolen from, but hey, it is what it is. It's a part of the game. So the higher level your wolf, the safer you are, and I'll give you guys some more details on the wolves later. So the farmers, they have different cooldowns to keep this in mind. You have different types of farmer. You have the Big Daddy, Big Mama, 100 years, the kid, Average Jane. If you guys want to pause this part of the video, you guys can get the details, or you can check out the wool paper to get all the details on this. Now the wolves, the spicy part. Gen 0 or Gen 1 can breed with each other. They have to spend energy and chops and wool to do this. So similar to the sheep with the first 50%, the courting, if they leave early, they get nothing. Well, the sheep at least got chops, but still, keep that in mind. Now, when a Gen 2 wolf is born, this is when the nurturing phase goes across, and they have to wait before getting the actual wolf to increase to max energy. This is just another way of saying, hey, this is how we slow the inflation rate of the Gen 2 animals. So the Gen 2 wolf's rank, like if it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, this is going to range from the alpha score of the two parents rounded down. So if you have a 7 and a 3, it's going to go to a alpha 4 because it rounds down. And the colors of the wolves, these are completely random. So you can get different color wolves. They are just random. The higher the alpha wolf, the stronger it is relative to others. Alpha 8's the best. Going to the resources, let's summarize this. The sheep get grass, stone, water, and wood. They must spend one-time energy to collect and will continuously spend energy to keep farming. Now, chops are from the butcher. This is by burning the sheep. The collection rates are basically determined by sheep stats and the other sheep in the community. The longer it collects, the faster it collects. If there are a bunch of sheep in the community, it's going to be no bueno for the other sheep. And the longer that the sheep sits there and collects, the faster it will collect resources. Taxes and weather, they also play a role on earnings for the sheep. Farmers, they can boost earnings by multiplying the collection, bumping, which is basically an instant collect on a resource, and it will protect from wolves. The wolves can loot collected resources by spending energy, so they can steal from the sheep. When you're a wolf and you're looting, there are one of two games that are played, and the weather is going to determine which game should be played. The wolf and sheep are given a simple choice: share or be greedy. The winnings will be determined based on the player's choices. So the Wolf Gambit is kind of like a game of blackjack. If the sum is 10, it's a bust, and the sheep gets 0 of the piece, and the wolf gets a little, and the remainder is burnt. Nobody wants that to happen, and the wolf can't earn his maximum earnings, but at least he'll still get something. Now, the sum being less than or equal to 10, so let's say I'm a sheep and I decide to do 2, and the wolf does 7, which is a total of 9, that's less than 10. The sheep will get 20% because it did it 2. The wolf will get 70%, so he's like, whoa, this is awesome. And 10% is burn. And also here's the payoff matrix for the different wolves. The higher the alpha, the more you will earn. So as you can see here, the alpha 8 just goes nuts in ham. Either in the share or the greed portion, he just earns a bunch regardless. But this shows you the ratios. So if it goes bust, it's no bueno. But if they share, it's usually a win-win for everyone. So keep that in mind. Now the wool spent, 95% goes to the community or to the peak, and 5% is burned. Now if the landowner, they're doing their thing, they get 100% of that wool. So that's the benefits of being a landowner. So the wool that's individually spent in the game, this goes to the community rewards. And in the future, players can compete to win the wool that was spent and put into the community rewards. There will be more details released later on this. So here's the base inflation rates of the different items. You got grass coming in at 3,500, wood at 4,000, stone at 1,000, water at 1,500. Now this is at their level 1. If you have a level 2, 3, or 4, you have these multiplier points so they earn at a faster rate. So to summarize, these are the different strategies you can play. So the first one is passive. I'm just going to buy and hold land, tax the mess out of these sheep, and just get resources. So the taxor is the guy who's going to go out there and he's like, I want as many resources as possible, and based on that, it's probably going to be more cost effective to buy a bunch of cheap land with good stats and earn the resource that you want to earn. Sure, there are other lands that specialize, hey, this just earns like 100% water. If you want to corner the market on water, you can do that. Or you can team up with other people. That's what I'm saying. It's like a game of Catan. Just imagine if you're the one guy who holds all the land with all the water. If anyone needs water, they have to trade with you. So you can get whatever you want, charge any price that you want, and basically have a monopoly. The wooler, this is basically the guy who just wants more wool. This could be the guy who gets all the structures and is like, dude, I want every single piece of land that has all the structure on it, and I'm going to own every single one of them, and I'm going to charge buku dollars in order for anyone to mint a sheep. Now, if they do that, I mean, in order for anyone to breed with their sheep or wolves, they got to pay that because they own the monopoly. That's what I'm saying. This game offers so many options for you to be able to do this. Then you also have the hunter. This is basically the more active. This is getting as many sheeps and using them to get resources and using farmers and whatnot to reduce the risk from wolves. Then you have the stealer. This is the guy who's basically, I want to be active. I'm going to get as many wolves as I can, and I'm just going to loot the mess out of these sheep. You could do that too. Then you have the breeder. This is basically the guy who's just like, bro, I ain't wanting to do anything with stealing from anyone. I don't want to be a landowner. I'm just literally going to get as many wolves and sheep as possible, and I'm just going to make babies. And you can see here in summary, this is the floor price of these different assets. This is in ETH. The A8 wolf, 1,700 ETH. What the snap? Then you got the A7, A6, whatever, and then you got the land and all kinds of jazz. But anyways, yeah, go ahead and check it out. It's on OpenSea and whatnot. As always, time will tell what happens, but the Discord is popping on this game. It literally reminds me of the game of Catan. If you want to find more details on this game, you guys can check out the Wolf Game website and check out the Discord. I'm telling you, the Discord peeps, they're the sauce, and they're pretty helpful. Just say Drake on Digital sent you. Maybe they'll give you some free resources or something. There's also a pretty sweet dashboard called wolfgame.tools. I'll show you guys that real quick before we end this video. And it actually gives you more specific floors on different types of assets. And by the way, guys, if you guys like this type of video and you enjoy this kind of content, it takes a lot of time for me to put this junk together. If you enjoy this, smash up the like, subscribe to the channel, and you guys will be notified every time I make a new one. Tell me what you guys think of Wolf Game. You can see here, I can literally say, hey, look, I want to see what the market looks like. I want to go to the floor data, and I want to be like, what's it? Oh, that's a Gen 0. It's going for 0.89 ETH. So you basically have all the details on the wolves, sheep, the land, the farmers, the wool pouches. Oh, the wool pouches, by the way, don't want to get into crazy details on it, but basically they're like little pouches that are basically locked wool, and they unlock over a certain period of time. So this is a breakdown of the pouches here, but you can use this website to find a different discount. As you can see here, this is like a 52% discount to liquid wool. So you're basically paying 48 cents on the dollar for this bag of wool. How is that? Well, it's because there's a big portion of wool that is locked for 4 years. So it's not really liquid. You're basically losing your liquid value of ETH, because if wool crashes in the future, the bag will be worth nothing. They're almost kind of like wool bonds, and basically you're locked up. That is the benefit of buying wool. You can get it at a discounted price if you think wool will be around for the long term, or it could be a short term trade. It's entirely up to you what you want to do, but you can look more into that and use this website. Let's go and hit you guys with our wisdom one-liner in Proverbs. This is verses 6. Blessings crown the head of the righteous, but violence overwhelms the mouth of the wicked. Be good, be righteous, peace.
Oh yeah, one other thing to note while we're going to go search these lands and see what's up. Oh dude, is that a sheep? Yeah, so this game is going to depend on the price of wool. So if wool is going up in price, it's going to increase the value of the other assets, typically. The reason for that is because, remember, the lifeblood of the game is wool. So if wool is going down in price, it's going to give better prices on assets. It's not always the case, but it typically is the case. The developers are probably going to do the best they can to protect the value of the wool, which the only inflation for wool currently is from the locked wool bags that we showed you on OpenSea. But man, this is just fun to see what these sheep are doing. If I had a wolf, I would attack this guy. Instead, I just have land. Let me see where my land's at. I have it somewhere here. I didn't connect my wallet, and I don't feel like it. But it's one of these guys. It's not that. It's got like 4 different pieces. Anyways, remember, the lifeblood is the wool. So wool goes up. Oh man, look at all these guys over here. These guys are going nuts and ham. This must be, these are definitely buddies. 707, AF9. Yeah, this is the same guy. Dude, come on, man. It's like come on, think about it. If you're having 3 sheep go in one section, you're basically working against yourself. So also notate that. I mean, then again, it could be protecting from wolves. But if you have all 3 sheep in there, you're basically hurting the total amount you can earn, because remember, these plots only earn so much in a given time. Yeah, sure, you have each and every sheep mining a certain amount, but having multiple sheep on one land dilutes the earning for that person. But anyways, it also helps to own a piece of land inside this plot, as well as having a sheep in there, because if you do that, technically you're getting the taxes that are taxed on the land because you're one of the landholders. So yeah, just some random tips. And basically, if you're still watching this video now, you are probably pretty interested in the game. Go check it out, play around with it. Not financial advice, of course. And if you guys want me to make another updated video on some strategy so you guys can implement it and try different plans, go for it. Just let me know in the comments below. Peace.